From the best rocket launcher in Borderlands 3 to a shotgun that literally shoots out lasers with burgers, the Revenge of the Cartel season and event has no shortage of incredibly powerful legendary weapons, which is why we're covering every single new legendary item that you can obtain from this new event. Let's jump into it. The O.P.Q system. Like the name of the weapon suggests, this is an overpowered legendary version of the original Q system. This is a legendary assault rifle that is manufactured by Atlas, and I have to say, this is one of the best assault rifles you will find in Borderlands 3. The O.P.Q system basically fires 2 projectiles at the cost of 1 ammo, and occasionally causes a shock explosion each time you hit an enemy. In addition to this, it also has an alternative firing mode that deploys a mini replica of the gun, which follows you around and shoots at any target that you shoot at. As always, the weapon view for this will be shown on screen, and what makes this weapon so good is its high base damage, good fire rate, and magazine size. That paired up with the fact that it shoots 2 bullets and spawns a copy of itself makes it so that this thing can put out a ton of DPS, and overall is an amazing weapon to use on Mayhem 10. As for its red flavor text, it reads BYOBB, which stands for Bring Your Own Bottle, and is actually a reference to this scene from the Simpsons movie.
Come to Homer's BBBQ. The extra B is for BYOBB.
What's that extra B for?
That's a typo.
Now, to get this weapon, you'll need to partake in the Revenge of the Cartel's main quest. This, of course, is given to you by Maurice aboard Sanctuary 3. Now, while this quest is active, the O.P.Q system will have a chance to drop from the uniquely named enemies known as Jozabai and Franco Firewall, who can spawn at random in any location within Borderlands 3 while the quest is active, but also have a higher chance to spawn in the later stages of the quest in Ultraviolet. And just to mention, this also has a chance to drop from the final boss of the event, known as Joey Ultraviolet. Overall, this is most definitely a weapon you need to get before this event is over. The Iceburger is a legendary shotgun in Borderlands 3 manufactured by Hyperion. The weapon itself is always incendiary and fires a continuous laser while also launching cryo burgers at your enemies, which is very similar to the gimmicky legendary weapon known as the Ghetto Burger. So it basically has 2 elements being fire and cryo, and the burgers it shoots out will explode on contact and split into 2 additional burgers, overall ramping up the damage of the weapon. The weapon view for this will be shown on screen, but as always, the stats are subject to change for you, depending on your mayhem level and variant. And as for the weapon's red flavor text, it reads 90% of the flavor is under the bun. If you know what that reference is, let me know in the comments below, because I have no idea. Now, this weapon has a higher chance to drop from the unique enemies being Roaster, the Tenderizer, and of course the final boss, Joey Ultraviolet. Again, these enemies are people you will naturally come across throughout the event. Overall, it's a decent weapon, but not one I would genuinely use. But hey, I main Flak, so if you have a good build out there that suits this weapon, let me know in the comment section below. The Yellowcake. To put it simply, this is the best weapon you can find in Borderlands 3 right now. It's basically a legendary rocket launcher that is manufactured by COV. It always comes with the radiation element and fires a projectile, which then explodes and splits into 2 projectiles, and then those 2 projectiles split again into 2 additional projectiles. This can be ramped up even more if you find a variant that comes with the ×2 modifier, doubling all of those projectiles, which at that point, given how much damage this weapon does, is just insanity. Like seriously, this thing will wipe out any mob in seconds and tear through most of the bosses in this game on Mayhem 10 with absolute ease. Out of all of the weapons on this list, this is one you will most definitely want to pick up, which in terms of obtaining this, it has a higher chance to drop from the enemies known as Fish Slap, Tyrone Smallums, and of course Joey Ultraviolet. To finalize this weapon, the red text for this reads, I'm really more of a pie person, in which I'm not really sure what that reference is, but the name of the weapon is a reference to actual Yellowcake. which is essentially a powder byproduct of processing uranium. Overall, it's an amazing new addition to Borderlands 3, but truth be told, knowing how this game works, this will most likely receive a nerf soon. Let's hope they don't nerf it into the ground like they tend to do with other weapons. Next up, we have the Grease Trap, which is a new legendary pistol manufactured by Maliwan. Now this weapon has a chance to drop from the enemies the Roaster, Tenderizer, and Joey Ultraviolet. This one did take me a few tries to get, I just kept going through the event over and over again, but eventually I managed to get it. Now the Grease Trap has two different firing modes. The first is its normal firing mode known as Firestarter, which fires standard incendiary projectiles, and the second is known as Hot Grease. Now while in the Hot Grease firing mode, you basically fire a burst of grease at enemies. Enemies hit by the grease will cause the first firing mode, being the Firestarter mode, to deal a lot of increased damage, and will also release a small incendiary nova around the victim when you hit them. When combining the two firing modes, this thing can put out a ton of damage. The only problem is that it's only really good for single enemy fights and isn't good for general mobbing. Switching between modes constantly can be annoying and tedious at times, and with the weapon's magazine size not being that good, it's not something I would normally use. Nonetheless, the weapon view for this will be shown on screen, and of course, again, these stats are subject to change depending on your variant and mayhem level. And finally, for its red flavor text, it reads extremely flammable, which I think is simply a reference to grease being somewhat flammable, but I may be wrong there, I don't know. So we're almost halfway into the video, and I've noticed that you haven't left a like yet, have you? What are you doing? Jokes aside, I've also noticed that at least 92% of you watching this video are not subscribed to the channel. So if you do enjoy these kind of videos, subscribe. And that leads us into our next weapon, which is the NoPewPew. The NoPewPew is a legendary assault rifle in Borderlands 3 manufactured by Children of the Vault. The weapon itself always spawns with the incendiary element and fires either 3 shots or 5 shots at the cost of 1 ammo, depending on the variant you get. In addition to this, the fire rate of this weapon increases the longer the trigger is held, and also generates a pool of lava on the ground when you kill an enemy. Because of this thing's extremely good fire rate and magazine size, it can actually put out a great amount of damage and conserves ammo better than most similar assault rifles with multiple projectiles. It also has the red flavor text that reads extra spicy, which I'm going to assume references the fact that when you eat extra spicy food and then you go to the toilet, that shit is gonna burn. Anyway, this weapon has a higher chance to drop from the unique enemies known as the Roaster, the Tenderizer, and also has a chance again to drop from Joey Ultraviolet. Overall, it's actually a really good weapon to use on modes like Mayhem 10. Coming up next, we have the Needle Gun XXL. This is a legendary submachine gun manufactured by TDO, and is very interesting to say the least. Taking a look at the weapon view for this thing, you can see that it comes with incredibly reduced damage for a max level weapon. However, the kink of this gun is that its fire rate increases over time, and it shoots out these laser needles in which when you hit an enemy, you apply a vulnerability debuff that stacks. Now when you reach max stacks with this, any additional damage you deal will refill the gun's magazine. Simply put, the more you hit an enemy, the more damage you will do over time, and you can keep this cycle going as you'll be constantly regenning ammo for as long as you're hitting an enemy. Even though this weapon looks terrible at first glance, it's actually pretty decent and not as bad as the weapon card makes it out to be. Although my build definitely wasn't suited for this, I will say that. Anyway, the red flavor text for this weapon reads not your average needle, which combined with the weapon's name could possibly be a reference to the Needler from Halo. And finally, in terms of obtaining the weapon, it has a higher chance to drop from Jozabite, Franco Firewall, and Joey Ultraviolet. The Fish Slap. Now, this is a very unique new grenade. Now, what makes this grenade so unique is its damage type, as the Fish Slap actually deals melee damage and gives you plus 15% damage for every enemy you hit. Now this is interesting because of the potential that this grenade has. With it dealing melee damage, you could theoretically pair this up with certain character builds, shields, class mods, and artifacts to get some really interesting combinations going. For instance, pair this up with a cut purse artifact and you can instantly regenerate ammo when using the grenade, which can actually be very useful for things like the Sandhawk. Or pair this up with a knife giant artifact and you can instantly get your health back. It's stuff like this that can really show this grenade's potential. Now outside of that, the overall base damage of the grenade is actually really good and it can come in loads of different weird variants. Now truth be told, I didn't have the right build, class mods or even artifacts at the time of recording for this grenade. But I'm definitely interested to see what kinds of combinations you guys can come up with, and if you do know any, be sure to let us all know in the comments below. Now to obtain the Fish Slap grenade, it actually has a higher chance to drop from, of course, the enemy known as Fish Slap, Tyrone Smallums, or even Joey Ultraviolet. So basically just go through the event a bunch of times and you'll eventually get this to drop. And to finalize, the red text for this one reads, "Say hello to my little fish," which is very clearly a reference to Tony Montana's world famous line from the movie known as Scarface.
Say hello to my little friend!
For the second last entry of the video, we have a brand new shield known as the Firewall. The Firewall sports a decent overall capacity and basically spawns a projected shield in front of you when you crouch. And this shield has a chance to fire projectiles back at the attacker. And also, a portion of the damage the shield takes will actually restore the shield itself. Now I'm not going to lie, this shield just doesn't suit my playstyle, so it's not something I would normally use. However, it is quite a tanky shield, so if you're into crouching while laughing as your enemies basically shoot themselves over and over again, then maybe this is the shield for you. To get this, you'll need to kill the enemies known as Franco Firewall, Joey Ultraviolet, or Jazabite, and hope this drops for you. To finalize, this weapon's red text reads, "Initiate countermeasures," which I think simply refers to the name of the shield being Firewall. And for the final new legendary item, we have the legendary Watson shield. What makes the Watson so unique is that when damage is taken, it fires these elemental discs at enemies, and these discs will spawn with a random element each time. The shield also has mediocre stats overall, and the main issues with this is that on modes like Mayhem 10, those elemental discs don't really do that much damage, and can even be a hindrance at times. Like in situations where an enemy is right in front of you and the shield triggers, the disc explosion itself can actually damage you and put you down. Overall, in my opinion, it's just not that great of a shield. But if you do want to get this, similar to the Fish Slap grenade, it can drop from Fish Slap, Tyrone Smallums, or Joey Ultraviolet. To finalize, the red text for this one reads, "It's all quite arbitrary, my dear boy," which combined with the shield's name is a reference to Sherlock Holmes' catchphrase, "Elementary, my dear Watson."
But how do you know about them?
Elementary, my dear Watson. This man has been dead for at least 2 hours.
And that's pretty much it for all of the new event legendary weapons in Borderlands 3. Make sure to get as many of these as you can before the event ends, and I'll catch you all in the next video.